I'm sorry. I'll have to put this back. The cashier barely looked up when the young woman slid the can of baby formula across the counter. Her voice was soft, almost apologetic, as if she were asking forgiveness for existing. Behind her, the line hummed with impatience, shuffling feet, tapping phones, a tired sigh or two. No one noticed the way her hands trembled as she hugged the diaper bag closer to her chest. No one, except him. Ethan Cole, chief financial officer of one of the fastest-growing tech firms in the city, stood 3 people behind her. He was dressed in a tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. His cart was full, organic groceries, imported coffee, a bottle of wine he wouldn't open anyway. He should have been thinking about the board meeting in the morning, the quarterly numbers, the email his assistant kept sending marked urgent. Instead, his eyes were locked on the can of formula. The cashier pushed it back gently. Your card didn't go through. The woman nodded quickly, embarrassment flushing her cheeks. I must have miscalculated. It's okay. She swallowed hard. I'll just take the diapers. Her baby stirred inside the stroller, letting out a small, hungry whimper. The sound cut through Ethan like a blade. He shifted his weight, suddenly uncomfortable in his polished shoes. He told himself it wasn't his business. It was just another sad moment in a city full of them. He had learned long ago how to look away. You didn't survive his world without building walls. Yet his feet stayed planted. The woman lifted the stroller slightly as she turned to leave, the can of formula already being set aside by the cashier. She didn't cry. That somehow made it worse. Ethan felt something tighten in his chest, a familiar ache he usually drowned in spreadsheets and late nights. Lonely. That's what the tabloid called him when his profile had gone viral a year ago. The lonely CFO who has everything. They weren't wrong. His penthouse was silent. His phone rarely rang unless someone needed a signature. He had money, influence, control, but none of it filled the hollow spaces. And right now, standing in a grocery store under flickering fluorescent lights, those hollow spaces were screaming. Wait. The word left his mouth before he could stop it. The woman turned, startled. Her eyes were tired but alert, the eyes of someone who had learned to expect judgment. Yes. Ethan gestured awkwardly toward the counter. The formula. Add it back. I'll cover it. A murmur rippled through the line. The cashier blinked, surprised. The woman's lips parted, then pressed together as if she were holding back 1,000 emotions at once. I can't, she said quickly. That's very kind, but I can't take charity. It's not charity, Ethan replied, though he wasn't entirely sure what it was. It's groceries. She hesitated. Her baby whimpered again, louder this time. She closed her eyes for half a second, then nodded. Thank you, she whispered. Just this once. The cashier rang it up. Ethan tapped his card without thinking. The receipt printed, long and unremarkable, but the moment felt anything but. Thank you, the woman said again, gripping the stroller handle. You have no idea how much this helps. Ethan nodded, unsure what to say. I'm Ethan. Lena, she replied. And this is Noah.
Noah.
The name landed softly in Ethan's chest, settling somewhere deep. Lena started toward the exit, then paused. I promise I'll pay it forward someday. Ethan watched her go, the automatic doors sliding open to let in a gust of cold evening air. He felt lighter and heavier at the same time. He should have let it end there. But as he wheeled his cart forward, the cashier leaned in slightly. You're a good man, she said quietly. Ethan almost laughed. Good men didn't miss birthdays. Good men didn't let relationships die because quarterly reports mattered more. Good men didn't wake up every morning in an apartment that felt like a hotel room. Still, as he walked out into the parking lot, he saw Lena struggling to load the stroller into an old sedan with a dented door and a cracked taillight. She moved with careful efficiency, the kind born from doing everything alone. Something inside Ethan shifted. He stood there longer than he meant to, keys in hand, watching as Lena finally settled Noah into his car seat and leaned her forehead against the door for just a moment, long enough for the mask to slip. That moment changed everything. Because for the first time in years, Ethan didn't feel like a spectator in his own life. He felt needed. And without fully understanding why, he knew this wasn't just about baby formula. It was the beginning of a story neither of them could have imagined. Ethan could have driven away. He didn't. He sat in his car with the engine running, hands resting uselessly on the steering wheel, watching Lena's sedan disappear between rows of parked cars. The grocery store's neon sign buzzed overhead, but all Ethan could hear was the baby's cry replaying in his mind. Thin, fragile, desperate. It followed him like a ghost. He told himself he had done enough. More than enough. He'd paid for the formula. That was the end of the story. Yet the end refused to come. Ethan shut off the engine. For a man whose life revolved around decisions measured in millions, this felt absurdly difficult. He had navigated hostile takeovers, layoffs, lawsuits. But this, deciding whether to involve himself in a stranger's life, terrified him. He checked his phone. 3 missed calls from his assistant. A calendar reminder flashed. Dinner, canceled again. Lonely CFO. The words echoed like a taunt. Ethan exhaled and stepped out of the car. He spotted Lena near the edge of the lot, struggling with a grocery bag that had torn at the bottom. A can of soup rolled free, clanking against the asphalt. She chased it awkwardly, one hand steadying the stroller, the other reaching for the runaway can. Before he knew it, Ethan was jogging toward her. "Hey, wait," he called. Lena stiffened when she recognized him. "Oh. Hi." Her guard snapped back into place. "You really don't need to." "I know," he said quickly, picking up the soup and handing it to her. I wanted to make sure you were okay." She studied him, weighing his words the way someone who'd been disappointed too many times learns to do. "We're fine," she said. "We always are." Ethan glanced at the car again. Up close, it looked worse. Bald tires, rust creeping along the edges. He thought of the storm forecasted for the night. "Look," he said carefully, "this is going to sound strange. But would you let me help you a little more? No strings. No expectations." Her jaw tightened. "You already helped. I know. And I don't regret it." He hesitated. "But I also know what it's like to walk away from a moment and wish you'd done more." Silence stretched between them. Noah fussed, tiny fingers curling and uncurling. Finally, Lena sighed. "I don't need money." "I wasn't offering money." She raised an eyebrow. "Then what?" "A meal," Ethan said. "There's a diner across the street. It's warm. And you look like you haven't eaten." The words landed harder than he expected. Lena looked away, blinking rapidly. "I can't," she said. "I have to get him home." Ethan nodded. "Then let me walk you to the car and make sure it starts." She laughed softly, a brittle sound. "It always starts." Eventually. He didn't push further. He simply waited. After a moment, Lena opened the driver's door. The engine coughed, sputtered, then died. She closed her eyes. Ethan felt a surge of protectiveness he couldn't explain. "Pop the hood," he said. "You're a mechanic too?" "No," he admitted, smiling faintly. "But I know how to call one." She hesitated, then did as he asked. While they waited, Lena finally spoke. "You don't have to do this." "I know," Ethan replied. "I want to." That seemed to surprise her more than anything. They stood side by side in the cold, an unlikely pair. The CFO with his cufflinks and polished watch. The single mother with a stained jacket and exhaustion etched into her bones. "You don't look like someone who shops at discount grocery stores," Lena said quietly. Ethan chuckled. "I don't belong anywhere lately." The tow truck arrived sooner than expected. The driver took one look at the engine and shook his head. Batteries dying. Alternators not far behind. Lena's shoulders sagged. "How much?" Ethan answered before the driver could. "I'll take care of it." "No," Lena said sharply. Ethan met her eyes. "Let me." She searched his face, then nodded, defeated. "Just this once," she repeated, the same words she'd used inside the store. The driver replaced the battery on the spot. The engine roared back to life. Lena buckled Noah in, then turned to Ethan. "I don't know how to thank you." "You already did," he said. "How?" By reminding me I'm still human. She smiled then, really smiled, and it transformed her tired face into something radiant. As she drove away, Ethan stood alone in the parking lot again, but this time, the loneliness felt different. Less heavy. Almost purposeful. He didn't know it yet, but the choice he'd made, to stay, to help, to care, was already rippling outward. And soon, it would demand something far greater from him than a credit card swipe. 3 days later, Ethan couldn't stop thinking about a baby he'd met once in a grocery store parking lot. It made no sense. His life had snapped back into its usual rhythm: glass-walled offices, strategic meetings, the quiet hum of power that came with being indispensable. Yet every spreadsheet blurred into the same image: a tired young woman, a cracked taillight, and a baby named Noah with a cry that still echoed in his chest. Ethan stared at his reflection in the elevator mirror as it climbed toward the 47th floor. The man looking back at him seemed unchanged, but something underneath had shifted. He wasn't just lonely anymore. He was restless. "Big presentation today," his assistant, Marla, said as they walked toward the conference room. "Board's in a mood." Ethan nodded absently. "Marla, do we still sponsor that family assistance initiative?" She blinked. "The emergency relief fund?" "Yes." "Why?" "Pull the latest reports. I want to review where the money actually goes." Marla studied him. "That's new." "So is everything else," he murmured. The meeting dragged on. Profits, projections, risk assessments. Applause at the end. Normally, Ethan would feel the familiar satisfaction of control. Instead, he felt hollow. That afternoon, he found himself driving without a destination until the road curved toward the part of town he rarely visited. Modest buildings, laundromats, corner stores with hand-painted signs. He slowed when he spotted the diner he'd mentioned to Lena. Against his better judgment, he parked. The bell above the door chimed as he stepped inside. The smell of coffee and fried eggs wrapped around him like a memory. He scanned the room. Then he saw her. Lena sat in a booth near the window, Noah asleep in a carrier against her chest. She looked up, startled, and then embarrassed. "Oh," she said quickly. "Hi." Ethan lifted his hands slightly. "I'm not following you. I promise." She almost smiled. "I figured. You look lost." "I am," he admitted. "Mind if I sit?" She hesitated, then nodded. They talked cautiously at first about nothing. The weather. The diner's terrible coffee. Noah's new habit of refusing naps. Gradually, the edges softened. "I work nights at a nursing home," Lena said quietly. "Days when I can. Childcare costs more than rent." Ethan frowned. "What about family?" Her jaw tightened. "Not an option." He didn't ask more. "Why are you really here?" she asked. Ethan stared into his cup. "Because I couldn't stop thinking about you." Her eyes widened. "That sounds worse than it is," he added quickly. "I mean, what happened? It made me realize how disconnected I've been." She studied him. "Disconnected from what?" "From people," he said. "From purpose." Noah stirred, letting out a soft sigh. Lena smiled down at him with a tenderness that made Ethan's chest ache. "Purpose finds you whether you're ready or not," she said. "Trust me." When they stood to leave, Ethan hesitated. "Lena, if you ever need help, real help, call me." He slid a card across the table. She glanced at it, then met his eyes. "I won't use this unless it's serious. That's all I ask." They parted with an awkward wave. That night, Ethan lay awake in his penthouse, staring at the ceiling. For the first time, silence didn't feel peaceful. 2 nights later, his phone rang at 2:13 a.m. Unknown number. He answered without thinking. "Ethan." Her voice trembled. "It's Lena. I'm sorry to call so late. I didn't know who else to." "What's wrong?" "Noah has a fever. The clinic won't see him without payment up front and my car." "I'm on my way," Ethan said, already reaching for his keys. The hospital lights were harsh and unforgiving. Lena paced while Ethan handled paperwork he didn't even read. When the doctor finally emerged, Lena sagged with relief. "It's an infection," the doctor said. "Caught early. He'll be fine. Lena broke down then, sobbing into her hands. Ethan stood awkwardly, then placed a hand on her shoulder. She didn't pull away. Later, as Noah slept in her arms, Lena whispered, "You didn't have to do this." "I know," Ethan replied, "but I'm glad I did." Driving home as dawn broke, Ethan realized something profound. This wasn't charity. This was connection. And it terrified him, because connection meant risk. But for the first time in years, Ethan knew exactly what he wanted to risk everything for. The first headline appeared on a Monday morning, right when Ethan thought things were finally quieting down. Tech giant CFO spotted paying hospital bills for stranger. Ethan stared at the screen in his office, jaw tight, coffee untouched. Someone had snapped a photo in the emergency room, him leaning against a wall, suit jacket slung over his arm, Lena sitting nearby with Noah asleep against her shoulder. The image was grainy, but intimate in a way that made his chest tighten. Marla hovered in the doorway. "PR is asking if this was an approved charitable action." Ethan didn't look up. "It wasn't charity." She sighed. "That's not how the board will see it." And they didn't. By noon, Ethan was seated in a glass conference room facing men and women who measured compassion in risk percentages. Words like liability, optics, and boundaries were tossed around casually. "You're blurring lines," the CEO said carefully. "Personal involvement creates exposure." Ethan folded his hands. "So, does pretending we don't see suffering?" Silence followed. That afternoon, Ethan drove to Lena's apartment for the first time, a narrow building above a closed-down bakery. The stairwell smelled faintly of old bread and bleach. He knocked softly. Lena opened the door, eyes tired but alert. "I saw the article." "I'm sorry," he said immediately. "I didn't mean to drag you into anything." She stepped aside to let him in. The apartment was small but clean. A crib in the corner. Formula cans neatly stacked like precious inventory. "I grew up learning that help always comes with a price," Lena said quietly. "I don't want to owe anyone." Ethan met her gaze. "Then don't owe me. Let me choose this." Her voice cracked. "That's what scares me." They sat in silence for a long moment while Noah babbled to himself. Finally, Lena spoke. "I got a notice this morning. The nursing home is cutting hours. Again." Ethan's jaw tightened. "That's not right." "It's normal," she replied. "This is how people like me fall through cracks no one notices." That night, Ethan made a decision that terrified him more than any boardroom vote ever had. He didn't just want to help Lena. He wanted to fix the cracks. Over the next 2 weeks, he quietly rerouted funding from the company's bloated marketing charity into direct emergency support programs, medical aid, childcare stipends, transportation vouchers. Real help. Immediate help. When the board found out, they were furious. "This is not your personal redemption project," one director snapped. Ethan stood his ground. "Then maybe it should be." The final warning came swiftly. Step back or step down. That same evening, Lena found Ethan sitting on the floor of his penthouse, tie loosened, city lights flickering beyond the windows. "You look like someone who lost a war," she said softly. "I might," he admitted. "They want me to stop." "Because of me?" "Because I refuse to look away." Lena sat beside him. "I never asked you to risk everything." "I know," Ethan replied. "I did it because for the first time, my life feels honest." She reached for his hand, then hesitated. Ethan waited. She took it. "Then promise me something," she whispered. "If you fall, don't regret seeing us." He squeezed her fingers. "Never." The next morning, Ethan resigned. The media exploded. Speculation ran wild. Scandal, burnout, secret deals. Ethan said nothing. Instead, he showed up. He helped Lena find a safer apartment. He sat with Noah during late-night fevers. He helped other families too, quietly, consistently, without cameras. For the first time, Ethan wasn't lonely. But consequences were still coming. And the biggest one that would test both his heart and his resolve, was closer than either of them realized. The letter arrived on a quiet morning. No headlines, no cameras, just a thin envelope that made Ethan's hands shake. He read it twice before the words fully sank in. Funding approved. Pilot program authorized. Permanent rollout pending results. Ethan sat back in his chair, heart pounding. 6 months earlier, he'd walked away from a career people spent lifetimes chasing. Now, the nonprofit he'd quietly built, focused on immediate, dignity-first support for struggling families, was about to go national. He didn't celebrate. He drove straight to Lena's apartment. She answered the door with Noah on her hip. Bigger now, steadier, eyes bright and curious. When Noah saw Ethan, he reached out with a delighted squeal. That sound, unfiltered joy, undid him every time. It happened, Ethan said, voice thick. They approved it. Clinics, childcare, emergency support, all of it. Lena stared at him, then laughed, then cried, all in one breath. You did this. No, Ethan said softly. We did. Life had changed in ways neither of them could have predicted. Lena no longer worked nights. With stable childcare and a scholarship funded through the program, she was finishing her nursing degree. Their apartment was brighter, safer, filled with laughter instead of constant worry. But the biggest change wasn't financial. It was belonging. One evening, months later, Ethan stood in the same grocery store where it had all begun. The same fluorescent lights. The same return counter. A different scene. A young father swiped his card, panic flashing across his face as it declined. Without hesitation, the woman behind him stepped forward. I've got it, she said. Ethan watched quietly as the cashier smiled and rang it through. No cameras. No recognition. Just kindness moving forward, one person at a time. He felt a hand slip into his. Lena stood beside him, Noah asleep against her shoulder. You okay? She asked. Ethan nodded, swallowing. I used to think money was power, he said. Turns out it's attention. What you choose to see. Later that night, as Noah slept between them on the couch, Lena spoke words Ethan had never dared to hope for. You didn't save us, she said. You stood with us. He met her eyes. That's all I ever wanted. The nonprofit grew. Families stabilized. Stories changed. Ethan was invited to speak at conferences, but he always told the same story. Not about success or sacrifice, but about a moment in a grocery store when he chose not to look away. Years later, when Noah asked how they met, Lena smiled and said, Your dad paid for baby formula. Ethan corrected her gently. No. Your mom taught me how to live. The lonely CFO never returned to the life he'd left behind. Because once you truly see someone, once you step into another human being's struggle, everything else fades into the background. And sometimes, the smallest act is the beginning of everything. ChatG.